Hello YouTube, RJ. Hey, today I just want to do a quick video talking about calibration of instruments on your bench. I've got out some adapters, and what we're going to do is this is a piece of coax that I'm coming off of my external ham antenna, one of my ham antennas. When you have these instruments, I buy them new. They come in with calibration certificates. I've got a pretty good idea how accurate they are and how calibrated they are. And so that's nice. But in the case of these instruments, over time, the years go by and you no longer are within the cal standard time period. So how do you know that your stuff is accurate enough for what you're doing? And so I'm going to show you real quick how I check, in this case, the spectrum analyzer. It's a couple years old. It's out of its spec sheet. You get a little certificate when you buy a calibrated instrument, and it says, it's met the specs, and here's what we assure you you'll meet. But sometimes it's nice to check that, and especially after the years go by, you no longer are guaranteed that. And if you're like me, you're a hobbyist and you're not professionally making money doing this, you can't afford to send your instruments out and have them calibrated every year, or in some of my instruments it's 2 years. You need a way to kind of check and say, hey, is this thing still good? Are we in good shape? And just how far are we potentially out? So I'm going to show you a little way that I do the spectrum analyzer, for example. So let me hook this up, switch some cameras around, and we're going to walk through testing and, if needed, calibration of my spectrum analyzer. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, I've got our camera set up to where you can see the scope well here, and I've got my ham antenna hooked into the RF input over here. What I'm going to do is let's set up and try to see how accurately calibrated this thing is. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to use WWV. I'm going to go to frequency, and my center frequency needs to be 10 megahertz. I'm going to use a span of about 100 hertz. Okay. And we can already see that there's definitely a signal there. But we're going to need to make some changes here to get this as accurate as we could be. See that's jumping around and such. So let's go in. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, I see it's automatically went down to 10. Yep, that's what I wanted on. Manual on 10. Actually, I could go 1 hertz on the VBW. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in. One of the important things I'm going to do is I'm going to go into trace, and I'm going to change my trace type. I want a video average, and I want to average, let's do 100 times. Okay. And let's do an average reset right here. And what's going to happen now, let's go back out to frequency. I'm going to hit peak, make sure continuous peak is on. And then this is going to take readings and start averaging. Okay, so let's give this a little time. What this is going to do is, this is actually the signal from WWV, and over time that average is going to clean us up a nice clean signal. It's going to get us a real clean peak of where that signal is falling, and then we can look and see what my unit thinks it is, and at that point we can make a decision on whether it's good or we need to try to calibrate it. Let's let it run a little bit. I'll come back and we'll take a look at where it settled out at. Okay, I've given it about a minute, and she seems to be settling out pretty well at the 10 megahertz on the money. So because I know WWV is very precisely at 10 megahertz, I know that my Rigel is DSA 815 spectrum analyzer is well within tolerance. I know that I can use it and be reliant on it to be accurate enough for anything I'm going to do. Now, what would I do if this was off? Let's say that this unit was off 5 hertz. Okay, because it has been. I did this 6 months ago, and it was off. I think it was like 2 hertz. Well, I calibrated it, and so how do you calibrate it? Well, it's a quite the little procedure here. But let's say it was off. We're not going to make any changes, but let's say it's off. What you do is you have to go into a service manual. And how do you get to into the service manual of DSA 815? Well, you do a lot of research on the internet to find people who figured it out, but because they don't want users doing it. So anyway, it's a procedure of a whole lot of buttons. So it's you do trace, TG, marker function, system, print setup, storage, measure setup, measure setup. And I don't know if it worked. So let's try it again. Trace, TG, marker function, measure setup, system, print setup, storage, measure setup, measure setup. Okay, see, it says welcome to maintenance mode. That's what I needed. Okay, now that we've got the service mode turned on, we should be able to go into system, which we're there now, and we go down another menu and service. You've got this service button you didn't have before. So if we hit that, we can see calibration under the service menu. This is not the calibration out on the other menu, the calibration menu. You hit this, you've got these things you haven't had before. And right here is what's important. Reference DAC, digital analog converter. Mine's at 1796. Now, it was, I can't remember what it was 6 months ago when I calibrated this thing, but it was a little different than that. What you can do is hit this and change it, and you can calibrate this thing. And what you have to do is you have to just play with it, make a change, see how that does, and work until you get it at the in this case 10 megahertz centered up. So we repeat this over and over again until we get this right on the money, 10 megahertz as it was when we checked it. So mine's good. Once you do that, you bail out, shut it off, turn it back on. You'll be out of service mode, and you're good to go at that point. But we're not going to change mine. It's a little tedious because you got to do this, and then what you really need to do is once you do that, you need to go back out of here to this calibrate menu under system that I was talking about and do a cal now. Let it calibrate using those new numbers. Check, do your averages, see where you are, decide if you need to make more changes, which way, go back in, do this again. It's like you do iterations of this until you nail it. And that's how you calibrate this thing. So it's that simple. It's straightforward. And, you know, that's one of the very nice reasons that, you know, WWV, they wanted to defund all of it. And a lot of people stood up, hams, and a lot of people stood up and said, we really need this. You know, we need that calibration standard. And this is when it comes in very, very handy. So I hope this was educational and entertaining. I hope you learned a little something from it. And for those that wonder how I know whether my stuff's accurate or not, this is kind of the steps I go through. That's good enough for me anyway. I hope you learned something. Hope it was entertaining. And I really hope you'll hit the like button for me if you enjoyed it. And if you haven't subscribed, like 96% of you aren't subscribed, do me a favor, take just the second it takes to hit the subscribe button and take the second it takes to hit the like button for me. It will do so much for me and I appreciate it. Thank you, and I hope to catch you in the next video.